Life's two most important questions are why and why not. The trick is knowing which one to ask. I was feeling stuck, so I threw myself into reading a lot. I needed grief education, man.
That is the book about the man who lost his two sons, no?
Both his sons.
Both.
Dr. Livingston specializes particularly in grief. He was my therapist without realizing it. He gave through his work, through his experience, and so through sharing it, I learned from that. And I said to myself, well, that's what I want to do. And so he really was a catalyst for me to give through my own experience and help others. Okay, I'm a little bit nervous.
Well, of course, I will worry a little bit if you are.
So now I'm going to come face to face with the man that's been guiding me through a very difficult time. I'm nervous because, I don't know, I've just never had a therapist before, so I don't even know what to do. That's a good reason to be nervous. My throat is choking. I mean, there's something wrong with the way I deal with the crises that do come up in my life. I just want to welcome you to our little bus here, our house.
It's quite a bus.
It's actually pretty special, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's
it is.
pretty fancy.
It is.
I just want to, sit here and try to be myself and let you be the professional because you know a lot more about this than I do, and that's kind of why I've invited you here. I noticed that particular note in your book heading, life's two most important questions are why and why not. The trick is knowing which one to ask. So for whatever reason, I've adopted this attitude, and I do live by it every day. I believe in it.
Okay. I think you have to ask yourself, well, what is the objective of this process?
Well, first of all, I'm afraid to make a fool of myself and to admit that I've got this nonsense going on in my mind that I just can't get over. The fact that my friend knew that she was going to hurt my family but did it anyway. I have a hard time with that.
This person that you're angry with turned out to be someone other than you thought. That's a misjudgment. You made a mistake. Well, in life, we have to pay for our mistakes.
Yes.
And what you're feeling now is your payment. Accepting responsibility is a step on a path toward forgiveness. Not just forgiveness of the other person, but forgiveness of yourself as well for having made this mistake.
Yes, I did definitely misjudge my friend.
And your husband.
And my husband. My ex-husband is a wonderful person. He's a kind and generous man. He's a great father. He's just a beautiful person. I can genuinely say that.
But he hurt you, Shania.
He did hurt me, but you know what? I hurt people too sometimes.
But I think you're trying to protect your relationship with him, understandably, because you have a son together and you've got to continue to parent him.
I guess I'm just not really ready to sit down and allow the anger part of our relationship to take over.
You've always been a strong person, and you try to convey that to everybody, and so I think that in some ways you haven't allowed yourself to experience this fully.
I definitely have not cried enough. I admit that. I'm trying to make up for it with laughing. Does that count?
No, it doesn't.
Does it count?
That's just another defense.
Can you laugh instead of crying?
Well,
I don't like crying. I do like to avoid it.
Because you associate that with weakness, right? I mean, someone would think less of you for it.
Yes, that is a part of it.
This is a terrible, life-altering circumstance, and that has to be grieved and has to be acknowledged.
That's what Fred and Carrie say to me all the time.
I just think that you're being more brave than you have to be. It's affected your voice.
It has. And the feeling you get when you want to cry, but you fight it and you get all choked up, it's as if now I permanently have that feeling, whether I want to cry or not. And I really need to do something about it.
I think you ought to think about getting some help from somebody on a regular basis, someone who you could... someone who can help
You're right,
help
I
you
know.
through this. It really is. It's the kind of thing that can't be worked through in one conversation. And
Well, the reason I've kind of thrown myself out here to do this is because I just felt that I was obsessing.
you have to be patient with yourself, Shania. I mean,
know.
it just is. It's going to take a little time. You do know that you're going to get through it, and you do know that there's something better for you on the other side.
Yeah.
Good.
I'm back in Vegas and I'm about to meet with Dr. Livingston again. Hello?
Oh, Shania, good to see you again. How have you been?
Oh, good. Dr. Livingston completely understands to the greatest depth what it is to lose someone you love. And then not only to carry on with his life, but through that experience then be able to give back and help others. I've been crying a lot in the last couple of days, and I think that maybe we could talk about the grief that we experience. And the hardest part, maybe, other than the pain while you're going through a crisis, is that now everything's different. Now we have a new reality, just like that.
But we haven't lost ourselves. That's the important thing to recognize. I reached a point in my grieving over the loss of my son when I had to ask myself, is this the defining moment of my life? Am I ever going to be anything besides a bereaved parent?
Yes.
And I think you're in the same position. And the answer, of course, is that yes, indeed, you
Yes.
do have an identity. This is not the defining moment of your life. It's just a terrible, terrible loss that you're in the process now of grieving.
Well, I'm trying to redefine this moment in my life.
Mm-hmm.
And then that brings me to, how do we go through life and weed out the people that could be potentially harmful to us or betray us? Like how,
I think realizing how vulnerable we are, because we're imperfect in terms of our ability to judge other people, so that we're all subject to betrayal. We're all subject to being taken advantage of. But here's the most important thing that I have to say to you, and that is, you can't get to the truth by asking the wrong questions. So rather than ask, why did these people do this to me? Mm-hmm. The real question is, what happened in this marriage that brought us to this? But I think you have to look a little bit farther back to get an answer
well,
to
I
that.
actually agree with you. I think that was maybe more of a result of a declining relationship anyway, but I cannot imagine my ex-husband ever would hurt anyone intentionally. He's a very kind man.
I think that it's a certain amount of reality helps here.
Okay.
Nobody slipped and fell into bed, you know? Be okay.
Yes.
It's intentional on both sides.
Yes, but Marianne was observing my relationship and the breakdown of my marriage, because I was sharing that with her, don't forget. I was confiding in her about my concerns in my marriage.
Well, she was following her heart too, though, don't you think?
Yes, but don't you think that a traitor is a different type of person?
Yeah, I don't know. It's
Well,
a
can you
harsh
help me?
judgment, because once you label her as a traitor, then she becomes a kind of cartoon figure. But kind of seeing her as someone who made an awful mistake makes her more human, I think. And so maybe she's not eligible
Yes.
for a firing squad.
You know, deep down, of course, I know you're right. That of course, I believe she made a terrible mistake. Will she ever realize, or whether she realizes it now or not, I don't know.
It's out of your control.
It's out of my control. That is certainly the truth.
But the question is, what's next?
What's
How
next?
do you,
I like
how do you move on from
Yeah.
this? And the ultimate act of courage is to be honest with ourselves,
Yeah.
and learn something from our losses and to face them in the way that you're doing. And I know it's going to be a great payoff for you.
I'm not over it. I'm not over being, upset with Marianne. Do we want to go upstate?
I'd love to.
But what I did by talking to Dr. Livingston about my anger was very necessary, because that is forcing yourself to deal, as opposed to just waiting and saying, oh, time will take care of it eventually. We're going up. Up, 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 can only go up from here.
Well, this must be a familiar feeling to you. I can't imagine it. What would it be like to have all those people looking at you?
Scary!
How did you
I get scared
get-
every time I'm going to go up on stage.
And my suggestion is that you not see this as something that you have to work hard at, or,
Right.
or some obstacle that you have to overcome. I think
Just
it has
do
much
it
more to
and-
do with releasing it. I don't think this is a mountain that you have to climb. I think it's maybe just a bed you have to relax in or something, you know, rather than seeing
That's
it.
a good way of putting it.
That's why I'd encourage the singing, even if you feel as though everything isn't perfect.
Yeah.
Think of it as a gift, you know, that you're going to give a lot of people who will be thrilled to have you back.
Yeah. I always say, you know, maybe I'll come back when I'm about 85 and I'm singing in the church choir. Yeah, I will sing again. It's when. I think sitting down with Dr. Livingston this time spread my healing up a little bit. This tour isn't about being passive. This tour and this journey is about engaging myself, taking on the challenge. Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you
So,
for everything.
All right.
It's inevitable that you're going to learn from that and grow from that.
Look forward to
Well,
looking
we're
at
going to
that
meet
book.
again, and
Yeah, of course.
we'll have more to talk about. Through this whole journey of mine, I've been fortunate to sit with some people who gave great advice and share their incredible insight with me.
Well, it's good to see you again.
So good to see you.
Glad to be here. Congratulations.
Oh, thank you. Dr. Livingston has become a real important part of my journey.
We're very happy.
Yeah, I can believe it.
So lots of change and lots of things to talk about.
Yes, indeed. All good, sounds like.
It's all good. I've learned so much in this time that I almost feel like I just want to sit around and talk about what I've learned. And get started and catch up.
Yes, indeed.
Not that everything's been answered, but I feel a lot more resolve all the way around. Thank you for rejoining me again on this journey.
It's a pleasure, Shania.
It's not been an easy one, but you have been like an anchor throughout the whole thing.
Thank you.
And what I've found is that no matter what kind of loss that devastates us, whether it's illness or death or the breakdown of a marriage, the grieving process is pretty much the same cycle. Once you've experienced an emotional crisis, you can't just say, well, that's it, I've decided I'm not going to feel that.
Yeah, and it brings us to the reality that we don't really have much control over our feelings, our thoughts. The only thing that we control is our behavior, which is why when we respond to these unwanted feelings, it's got to be behaviorally. It's not by suppressing them or wishing that they would evaporate.
And what I found that I've done throughout my whole life is I do try to control my reactions. And then I ended up doing what you just said. I suppressed a lot of it. And I think I will spend a lot of time still finding that equilibrium and that balance.
But it's interesting that one of your reactions was to become rather perfectionistic, which is really, I mean, that pays off for people. It makes them good at what they do. But behind that perfectionism lurks fear.
Yes.
And I think that's what you're finding.
I can't say that I'm comfortable confronting things that scare me, but by doing it more often, I'm getting more comfortable with the fact that on the other side of it, I'm okay.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I always say, unless you have 3 good reasons why not to do something, you really should do it.
As someone once said, a lot of people die with their music still inside them.
Yes.
And in some ways, that's the definition of courage, you know, moving forward even though you're afraid. Courage isn't fearlessness, it's just the ability to keep going when you're experiencing fear. And sometimes it takes a crisis, such as you've been through, to bring us face to face with that and realize where our strength lies.
You're right. It took one more crisis with my marriage to make me realize it is just no fun living in this pretend world of I'm okay, everything's all right, when I'm not all right.
In that sense, it was a disguised blessing, wasn't it? I mean, it kind of, you wouldn't have chosen this, but once you were forced into coping with it, it's, I think, turned out to be a really important experience for you.
Yeah, well, I feel very grateful that I've, for some reason, this time around in this crisis, I have finally found the courage to be different. I can't live and try to just pretend that everything's okay. So the me now has a different perception on things overall.
I think you've become much more hopeful in the course of this, just in the time that I've known you. That's really an important capacity to develop, because without it, our lives are pretty empty. And so to see your optimism returning, I think is going to be a really great gift.
I hope so. Through all the evolution that I've gone through with this emotionally and psychologically, and I'm just much, much more in acceptance now about who I am, and that's a very peaceful feeling. It's been a really beautiful experience for me.
It's been productive for me as well, and I thank you.